Hi there, it's Katie Crysdale here from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. Welcome back to your weekly Aquatic Industry Insider. In this series, we talk about all of the top news from the swimming pool, the aquatic industry in the last week. This week, we're going to be covering the week of August 21st to August 27th of 2022. All the articles I'm going to be talking about are shared on the Lakeview Aquatic Consultants Facebook page. They'll also be linked in the box below, so you can click through and read any articles that we've mentioned. The first article I want to mention is from Yahoo News. Obviously not the most reputable news source, but this was the first place that I saw this story, and it did proliferate in other news publications as well. So the headline for this story is called "Muslim Family Wearing Burkinis Told They Couldn't Swim at Manitoba Water Park." And this is dated from August 22nd, 2022 on yahoo.com under the section Yahoo Life. Halima Jaoul is on a mission to raise awareness after an incident at a Manitoba water park. Over the weekend, Jalul, her husband, and their two daughters entered the Lilac Resort in Winnipeg, Manitoba for a fun-filled family trip. Located 20 minutes outside of Winnipeg, the resort offers camping, cabin rentals, and a water park. Upon arrival, Jalul and her family said they were told they couldn't enter the pool due to their attire. About 10 to 15 minutes later, the owner approached us and said, due to the burkini me and my daughter were wearing, we weren't allowed on the water slide. I was very uncomfortable, obviously. I wasn't shocked that it happened. So a couple of different things here. The owner then went on to speak with a health inspector, and they determined that the women in the burkinis could enter the water. But at that point, the family decided that they didn't want to proceed with the outing, and they left the water park. And the owner of the water park in the article is quite verklempt and does apologize for the incident and his misunderstanding that he perceived that the women were in street clothing. And so that was his reason for not allowing them into the aquatic facility. Unfortunately, this is a pretty common story. In aquatics, there still continues to be a lack of understanding about what is safe, I use air quotes, safe, and what is appropriate swimwear. To step back for a second, I think it's really important that we clarify what the root concern is. Sometimes the lifeguard is taking a perspective that they are enforcing the health regulations in terms of no street clothing, so that is clothing that you wore to the pool, is not permitted in the pool. And then other times lifeguards are taking the perspective of a safety issue. And so it's really important to identify what is the focus of the enforcement. So certainly we don't want to see dirty clothes that were worn to the pool, a t-shirt, shorts, underwear being worn into the pool, because the spirit of the health regulation is that we should have clean attire in the pool, and it should be attire that is suitable for swimming. There are fabrics that are better suited to swimming in water, being soaked and wet, as opposed to something like cotton or denim that would become heavy when it's wet and becomes both a safety issue, but it also traps things like laundry detergent, sweat, deodorant, lotion in the pores of the fabric, as opposed to a bathing suit material, typically something like Lycra, which is intended for continuous use in water. So that's the health authority piece or the pool operator piece. And then there is also often a piece where lifeguards perceive that more clothing in the pool is dangerous. Having worked as a lifeguard for many years, I've definitely seen people who don't have access to the funds to buy a bathing suit show up in leggings or tights or sweatpants or jean shorts and a t-shirt and try to swim. And there definitely can be a safety concern in the way that fabric becomes weighed down, restricts the movement of the person who may also be a weaker swimmer if they don't have a lot of experience swimming. But it's also important to understand that not everybody has access to swimsuits, and not everybody is comfortable wearing a swimsuit that is more revealing. So the same way some people might be more comfortable, like a woman might be more comfortable wearing a one-piece full coverage swimsuit, and someone else might be comfortable wearing a string bikini with very little fabric. Other people would be more comfortable in their own, for modesty reasons, for religious reasons, wearing something like a burkini. Now, Burkini is a specific brand that invented a full body swimsuit that does look like a wetsuit or leggings, where there is coverage all the way down to the ankles and all the way down to the wrists. But it is made of swimsuit fabric, and it is designed to maximize movement, freedom of movement, so there isn't any restrictions. And it is designed not to have things dangling on it like belt loops or strings and tags, where historically lifeguards have said we can't have this on the water slide because of the risk of something catching in the seam of the water slide and pulling the person, like arresting their slide and causing them to become injured. I guess to tie this all together, I wasn't surprised to see this article. It continues to happen across Canada, around the world, where different aquatic facilities, different lifeguards are not exposed to a variety of swimwear. And I'll show on the screen that there is a huge variety now of modest swimwear being developed for women. And it's not just for women with a particular religious concern. It's also for women who might have had surgery. They might have a skin sensitivity to the sun, skin cancer. There's a variety of reasons that people might be more comfortable wearing more coverage in terms of swimwear. And so it's really important at your facility that you look at the signage as well as the education and how you define what is proper swimwear, making sure that you're following a definition that actually coincides with whether your intention is to focus on the pool operator, the water quality piece, or the aquatic facility safety piece, the lifeguard piece. And I'll post on the screen a variety of different signage that I've seen at some facilities that are really focused on welcoming a variety of different cultures and communities, and that swimwear is not just a Speedo swimsuit that you see on somebody like Michael Phelps or Penny Alexiak. There are a large variety of swimsuits, and it's important that we have this conversation with our staff well in advance of any PR situations like this that could blow up and really create an unnecessarily negative experience for people who are looking to participate in a great time at your aquatic facility. The next article I want to mention is an article that is about a topic that is a particular frustration for me. I've written posts about it on our website, the Lakeview Aquatic Consultants website, a blog post, and it concerns free diving. So if you don't know what free diving is, it is basically swimming underwater, holding your breath for an extended period of time. Historically, it was used by different cultures for things like spearfishing or pearl harvesting, and it does serve a purpose for those communities. But in 2022, free diving has become a very glamorized activity, in my experience, based on the proliferation of a lot of free divers on Instagram and Pinterest, and the way in which they are marketing their training camps and their status through these amazing, like the photos are amazing. These free divers go down to the bottom of the ocean and do these incredible dives. You can't deny that the photos are incredible. And then people become curious about what they need to do in order to hold their breath for longer. So my concern with the issue is in the industry, the way in which we've talked about, we don't want to advocate for lung busters and breath holding as it's a safety hazard for the average person to try and replicate these activities. And so I was really disappointed to see this article. I'll talk about what it is. But we do have to reshare these articles because it is something that the industry needs to contend with. We can't just stick our head in the sand and ignore what's happening. So this article is from Al Arabiya News. It is dated August 17th, 2022. And the title is Free Diver Molchanov Reaches Bottom of World's Deepest Pool in Dubai in Under 1 Minute. So I'll read you a little bit of the top of the article. Free diving champion Alexei Molchanov marked a new record after he swam to the bottom of Deep Dive Dubai the world's deepest swimming pool, and back up to the surface in 57 seconds, the official Emirates news agency WAM reported on Wednesday. Before performing the record-breaking feat, Molchanov used a breathing technique called lung packing, which divers use to inflate their lungs by forcing air into them using muscle contractions similar to swallowing, so they're gulping down air, enabling them to fill their lungs with as much as 2 gallons of air in order to stay underwater for minutes at a time. Intense training and acclimatization are required to perform free diving. Experienced divers like Molchanov must reduce their heart's cardiac output, which lowers blood pressure, a technique that is tough to perfect and can have dangerous consequences if not done correctly. So, first thing you need to know is Deep Dive Dubai is an incredible swimming pool. It recently opened in Dubai and it took the record away from the pool in Italy that previously held the deepest pool in the world. It's not intended as a swimming pool. It is designed as a research and scuba diving pool. And the Deep Dive Dubai design is really incredible. I'll post some video footage up on the screen. If you have the opportunity to look at their website and their social media, what they have done at that facility is tremendous. With this beautiful new facility, it makes sense that they would host a variety of different events and to promote themselves in the media. And I guess I was naive in thinking that free diving would stay in the oceans, as it were. A lot of the big events take place in oceans around the world. There's the Blue Hole somewhere in the Caribbean that's quite deep, and other areas of the world where those events are popular. But it does make sense that Deep Dive Dubai would host something like this as promotion. So I guess the piece I just wanted to mention is that it's really important as an industry that we're thinking about how the layperson, the non-aquatic professional, they read or they hear about this type of thing, and then how does it trickle down to the average customer in terms of coming into your pool and trying a lung buster or trying to pack air and not understanding that the techniques here are training the body to not follow through with its instinct to breathe, to inhale, and that buildup of carbon dioxide in the body can lead you to pass out. I'll put a link in the box below to an excellent video that Kelly Martinez, an aquatic professional out of Phoenix, uploaded regarding a lung buster that is filmed. It's a woman who does a 100-meter lung buster, so she does not take any breaths of air. It is a 50-meter long course pool. She swims there underwater, does an underwater flip turn, and comes back before passing out near the end. Her coaches retrieve her from the water and they do resuscitate her. It is quite a graphic video, but I'll link to it as an example where people don't realize what will happen when you hold your breath. You'll just stay underwater, you'll pass out, and you'll die. It's interesting to note too, there have been a lot of free divers who've died, both in terms of never resurfacing, in terms of having injuries like burst eardrums, brain damage. And if you do go down further in this El Arabiya article, further at the bottom, it does say that Molchanov's mother, Natalia Molchanova, went missing in 2015 after doing a private freediving lesson in Spain. So I thought that was unfortunate, but interesting that some of these athletes are very persistent in what they do despite the risks. The next article I want to mention, we're still talking about the week of August 21st to 27th, is a really interesting article out of Ontario with regards to a trend that we've been seeing in our consulting work since pools have reopened in Canada from the pandemic. So this article is from cbc.ca. It was posted on August 22nd, 2022. The title is Clash with Local Health Unit Drains Hot Tubs at Some Ontario Resorts. The title is a bit confusing. Also worth noting, this article has 1,469 comments, so that gives you an idea of how divisive this issue is. Co-owner Stephen Orr was already struggling to get his cottage resort in rural Ontario back afloat after being closed due to the pandemic when he was dealt another blow. His local health unit has ordered the resort to shut down all of its hot tubs because they don't comply with provincial rules. Rules which he says were disregarded by local officials for decades and which go unenforced in neighboring jurisdictions. or runs the Buttermilk Falls Resort, which includes 9 rental cottages and 5 hot tubs. The hot tubs are on the private decks of each cottage and are only used by the guests renting that specific cottage. Last month, the resort was forced to drain the hot tubs after the Halliburton-Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit said they weren't in compliance with provincial regulations. The requirements, typically for larger pools with communal hot tubs, include having drowning safety equipment, a phone, and shower facilities. So this article does have a lot of bias, and there are a lot of sort of side notes that I did read you in those excerpts. I'm going to try and unpack why this article is problematic in terms of the perspective that it takes. So first and foremost, in the province of Ontario, every commercial site falls under the provincial health regulations, except for buildings with less than 6 units. And those buildings are condo residences. It never excludes a resort, a hospitality type location. And so the premise that the owner feels that they are exempt from the provincial health regulations is the fundamental problem with his perspective, respectfully. Every property, whether you are a swim school, a campground, a bed and breakfast, a hotel, a university, a day salon, every property in Ontario is subject to the health regulations, whether it's a swimming pool, a hot tub, a spray park, a splash pad, a wading pool. That part is clear in the provincial regulations. Speaking to the fact that previously they have not been required to do certain things, that does happen. I've worked with a number of clients here in Alberta where the province wasn't even aware that they had a hot tub or they had a spray park for a number of years. Then it came to their attention, and then they were given a period of time to get on board with the documentation. So certainly it may be the case that this individual, this property, the health unit was unaware of the hot tubs. It does happen. However, there is probably a gap in this man's story that he's not reporting the notice that he was given to remediate these issues in terms of installing a landline phone, in terms of installing health and safety equipment. The rescue equipment like the spinal board, the landline telephone, that is explicit in the provincial regulations. So by having those hot tubs and multiple hot tubs at that, he is not in any way exempt. I can appreciate how frustrating it is when it appears that other jurisdictions or other units or other properties are not subject to the same standards. And I have experienced that with clients in the same district where they'll say, well, you know, the hotel down the street doesn't have to do this. And you often don't have the full story, right? They're often also on notice to make remediation. Maybe there was a change in staffing. Maybe there was a change in note-taking or the database. The fact that they weren't required before is immaterial to the requirement that the province does say you have to have these things. And so now moving forward, in order to operate, you do need to have this equipment. I can sympathize as a business owner, the costs that come with buying that equipment, with making these changes after years and years, 2020, 2021, 2022, difficult revenue, having your resort closed due to the pandemic, I totally sympathize. But at the end of the day, just because you perceive the likelihood of something happening to be low doesn't exempt you from the regulation. And if you don't want to comply with the regulation, then you don't provide those services. You don't offer those hot tubs, those spas. You don't have them as amenities that privilege your property or rank it higher than others in the area. The sad thing is this does seem to be a trend right now since the pandemic. So it's 2022, and I've worked with a number of clients recently or prospective clients that we declined to work with who also perceived that they were exempt. So I worked with a private athletic facility recently that perceived that they were not a public pool because they were membership only, right? By invitation, high performance athletes were permitted to train at their facility. They're still a public facility in the eyes of the province of Alberta. There have been a number of condo buildings as well recently who have argued with me that they should not be subject to commercial pool regulations because there is no commerce involved, right? But they sell the units in the building and people pay condo fees. So these are all instances where you are not exempt from the provincial regulations that are there to provide safety and security to bathers in terms of setting chemical standards. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. If you're watching this video, you probably feel the same way, but I thought it was interesting how, this person is really fomenting the media to say, I'm exempt, we shouldn't have to do anything. And it just doesn't make sense. But it is an ongoing topic of conversation right now in the industry. Next video I want to mention is a terrible news story. You might have encountered it. It did cross over to the mainstream media. It was such a sad, sad story. So the particular article I linked to was from kenyans.co.ke. So it was a Kenyan website. You can Google and find this story on any number of mainstream media websites. It took a few days to get picked up by the mainstream media, but it was a terrible and unique story. This was posted on August 19th of 2022. Kenyan woman in Canada drowns while filming live on Facebook. Unfortunately, the article describes exactly what the title says. This woman was on holiday in Kenya. She had been working in Canada as a healthcare aide, and she was doing a Facebook Live while she was in the pool, and she swam out of her depth and drowned on Facebook Live. I haven't seen the video. We will not be posting the video on our Facebook page. I would imagine it's quite graphic, and there's no reason for anybody but her family. And even then, I know her family was quite traumatized to see that video. But it's a terrible, terrible situation. And I'm sure other cases like this have occurred, but not been as widely reported. Without placing blame on the victim, I do wonder, and this is where I haven't seen the video and I don't plan to watch the video, I do wonder what happened. Was it a Facebook Live with friends and family? Is it possible somebody was showing off about their vacation, about the pool? I don't know. Is it just the case that people underestimate the depth of the water? Was the slope of the pool incorrect? There are safety standards for how much slope there can be in terms of steepness and how quickly it descends to a bigger depth. I don't know, but it's a terrible, terrible incident. There was a TikToker this week who was reported taking selfies near the edge of Niagara Falls in Ontario, one of the largest waterfalls in the world with huge velocity of water. I did not reshare that on our Facebook page. And there have been an increasing number of selfie deaths from people getting into situations where they're trying to snap the perfect Instagram photo and they do end up dying because they fall off of a cliff. I know that's been a common one here in Alberta, hiking in the Rockies, as well as other instances with wet rocks, trash the dress, getting in the water with your wedding dress, any number of incidents where people get injured, putting themselves into positions where it is quite dangerous. The last article I want to mention is not actually from this week. It comes from 2 weeks ago, and it slipped through the cracks when I was looking at the different articles I wanted to reshare on the Aquatic Industry Insider. This one was a really amazing article. It's generated some interesting discussion. People are for the lifeguard, some people are against the lifeguard, and then some people have had real conversations about whether this could happen at their aquatic facility. So this article was posted on July 19th, 2022. I don't think I saw it until about mid-August. I have it written down that we posted it on August 13th on our Facebook page. It is from k10.com, and it's entitled "Deaf Lifeguard Offers Different Perspective at Denison Pool." Denison is in Texas. So of all the sounds at a swimming pool, William Monday can't hear any of them. But that just might make him better at his job as a lifeguard at Waterloo Pool in Denison. Monday's on the swim team and he hopes to compete in college. He's also deaf. He goes on to talk about his journey to the pool. And essentially what the article talks about is how because Denison can't hear the splashing water, because he can't hear the kids screaming, because he can't hear maybe the background music playing, perhaps he is more focused on visually watching the different swimmers in the pool and their status, right? As comfortable swimmers, as weak swimmers, as injured swimmers. So it's a really interesting article and something that I had never considered in terms of the equity piece of how we could have different types of lifeguards working for us at our facility, and the way in which we would accommodate them in terms of, communication between staff, signaling, in-service training. Really, really interesting article that I would encourage you to read if you have some time. So that's it for this week. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the articles that I shared. If you have any comments, anything that you disagree with or want to add, please feel free to drop a comment in the box below, and we will catch you next week with our next edition of the Aquatic Industry Insider.